Hello everyone, and today I'm embarking on a fairly large journey to rank every episode of Spongebob. The only rule for this is that I will not be including the Season 13 episodes that have aired, but I will be including the Season 12 episodes that have not yet aired on TV because they're on the Season 12 DVD, which has been out for some time. Why did I decide to do something like this? Well, I saw LS Mark's video ranking every Simpsons episode, and I thought, there's probably another show with a yellow main character that can't seem to end no matter how stale or derivative it gets. And I know that I'm going to get called a ripoff of him, but at this point I've been called a ripoff of just about every other cartoon critic on YouTube, so I might as well check another one off the list. And honestly, this to me is a personal challenge to see how large of a project I could get done. I really want to do this because, let's be honest, I want to be done talking about this show. What this means, though, is that I won't exactly have time to rank each episode and go thoroughly in depth with my analysis of them. I'll basically be giving 1 to 2 sentence summaries of my thoughts of each episode. And if you want me to elaborate more, just leave a comment and I'll try to talk about that episode in particular you want me to talk about. Without further ado, I give to you number 509, Atlantis Squarepantis. Really, this is an awful episode, padded out by the overly large amount of musical numbers. When you get rid of the fluff, this could be a 7-minute long short. Number 508, Spongebob, You're Fired. This episode has 22 minutes of runtime and can't seem to decide what to do with it. It jumps from one point to another with no cohesion to bring those points together. Number 507, Truth or Square. This episode shows a clear lack of understanding of how to follow a plot. Couple that with the horrible way this episode was marketed and the awful patchy segments, and you've got one of the worst episodes in the entire show. Number 506, Yours, Mine, and Mine. This is one of Patrick's most unlikable appearances, and the ending proves he never changed from point A to point B. Number 505, You Don't Know Sponge. All the implications of Patrick being a horrible friend aside, if you don't care much about that, this episode is boring. Number 504, That Sinking Feeling. I don't exactly know how it's even possible to be this bored and this annoyed at the same time. That's right, this episode is so bad it's logic-defying. Number 503, Choir Boys. One archetype that often gets done poorly is the Squidward torture episode. That Sinking Feeling is the most dull of them, but this one piles on the most torture for no reason, and I went back and forth on which one of those is worse. Number 502, Cuddle E Hugs. So apparently SpongeBob eats a rotten Krabby Patty that makes him hallucinate, but then he was a hallucination of the hallucination. Yeah, the plot of this episode makes no sense, plus the rotten patty is disgusting. Number 501, Whatever Happened to SpongeBob. This episode is incredibly cruel and mean-spirited for no reason. Another thing that's here for no reason is the amnesia, which could have been removed entirely and the episode wouldn't have changed that much. Number 500, Face Freeze. This episode is just entirely stupid faces, and if you don't find them to be funny or disturbing, this episode is just a boring ripoff of Hooky. Number 499, Waiting. I really shouldn't get to call any other episode boring, because this episode gives new meaning to that word. Number 498, Boating Buddies. Yay, another Squidward torture episode, and another episode where SpongeBob is needlessly creepy, just what the doctor ordered. Number 497, A Pal for Gary. SpongeBob's obliviousness to a monster basically trying to destroy his house and eat his pet snail is so out of character, it's amazing to think this might not have been a first draft. 196, Free Samples. I'm about to blow your mind. This is one of the most complex plots since Tolkien. The townspeople like the Krabby Patty samples, then they don't. Genius, I know. Number 495, The Nitwitting. Listen, I know Patrick's a moron, but there's a difference between being a moron and brain dead that I guess the writers don't see. Believe it or not, there's actually a certain logic to writing a stupid character. Plus, the saliva scene made me gag upon first viewing. Number 494, One Course Meal. I bet some of you are surprised to see this so high. Well, I think people blow that one suicide reference out of proportion. That's one tiny scene that, while yes, it is bad, it didn't make me angrier than the entries below it. Number 493, Toy Store of Doom. This episode takes forever for something to actually happen, and when it finally does, it's not really that big of a deal. What a clickbaity title. Number 492, Home Sweet Rubble. Yep, we got another boring one from Season 8, and once again it's a ripoff of an earlier episode. Also, the ending is contrived, and while it was technically foreshadowed, it honestly comes off as a really lame way to end the episode. Number 491, SpongeBob vs. the Big One. A misleadingly anticlimactic episode that wastes a celebrity guest star. I remember watching this as a kid and feeling ripped off. Number 490, Dream Hoppers. Some of you might be surprised to see this so low, but it just had to crack the bottom 30 because of how insultingly it rips off Sleepy Time. Except it takes away any plot structure and, oh yeah, dialogue. Number 489, Big Sister Sam. So you introduce us to a new character and expect us to like this character because they destroyed someone's house. Yeah, if that was supposed to be a joke, it fell flat, and what you have left over is a really unlikable one-off character. Number 488, Jolly Lodgers. So we have another Squidward torture episode, and unfortunately the nice visuals at the hotel can't save this one. Number 487, Plankton's Regular. Plankton finally gets one customer that is in no way a threat to Crab's massive business. Oh no, guess we can't let Plankton be happy. Plus the ending where it turns out Karen was paying Nat is such a slap in the face. Number 486, New Fish in Town. Oh, Squidward finally gets one friend that he has something in common with? Oh no, guess we can't let Squidward be happy. Plus the ending where he jumps off a cliff is just a slap in the face. Number 485, Pet Sitter Pat. So what happens if you take a pal for Gary, add Patrick, and then subtract 20 from his normal IQ? You get this abomination. That's only better than a pal for Gary because I don't have to look at Puffy Fluffy's ugly design. Number 484, Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom. Here we have another awful squid torture episode, and we get this show's worst version of Patrick, where he just does what the plot demands. Number 483, The Clash of Triton. This special was hyped up back in 2010, and it was pretty forgettable. The one thing I remember about this episode is that it came out the same day my dog came into my life, and I hate that my dog has to be associated with such an awful episode. Number 482, The Play's the Thing. Have you ever wanted a self-aware squid torture episode? Well, here you go. Being self-aware doesn't make you suck less, by the way. Number 481, Rodeo Days. So the plot to this episode doesn't really start until it's almost over, and the musical number at the beginning is really the only good thing about it. Number 480, House Sitting for Sandy. So here we have another Sandy-themed episode with basically no plot. And if you can believe it, there's even a deleted scene that covers an animation error. This is honestly the laziest episode of the whole show. Number 479, Squid's Visit. Look, I don't know who needs to hear this, but SpongeBob being a creepy sociopath is not funny. Number 478, The Card. Here's another self-aware episode that I think is worse because of its self-awareness. Yeah, we know Patrick's an unlikable douche and we're proud! Number 477, Pineapple Fever. This episode goes from boring to stupid very fast, with little transition between the two. Number 476, Dear Vikings. The ending line to this episode is, "Now that's what I call a Viking-sized adventure," which, if that's the case, Vikings must be really tiny, like microscopic. Number 475, The Splinter. On the first watch through, this episode is disgusting. On each subsequent watch through, this episode is boring. Number 474, Ink Lemonade. So in this episode, Patrick is way too clever in his attempts to try to get Squidward's ink. So it's a Squidward torture episode that goes in the opposite direction the show usually tries. Number 473, Trench Billies. Are you guys noticing a pattern with a lot of these Season 7 episodes? Well, let me shock you. So, this episode is... what's the word? BORING! Number 472, Krusty Dogs. Gosh, by the time this is over, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, aren't I? Number 471, Salsa and Basilicus. So here we have what I like to call diet nitwitting. It's not funny to see these characters brain dead, but even if it were, this episode has an awful pacing problem that's really all over the place. Number 470, Cephalopod Lodge. This episode is like Choir Boys with less creepy undertones. I want to say that some things in this episode were done better, but honestly it's only above Choir Boys for that reason. Number 469, Slide Whistle Stooges. So here we have the audio version of The Splinter, and wouldn't you know it, this episode and The Splinter were made back to back. Number 468, Porous Pockets. So this episode really only starts about 7 minutes in. The setup lasts longer than the plot itself, which is one of the biggest mistakes a writer can make. Number 467, The Hankering. This episode goes out of its way to not just contradict a passing line in an earlier episode, but a fundamental aspect of one of the characters. I just felt dirty watching this one. Number 466, Nightlight. This episode would have probably taken up a middle spot on the list were it not for the massive gear shift towards the end. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy just show up for basically no reason. This is one of the most unfocused episodes of Season 5, which is saying a lot. Number 465, Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. For ripping off imitation crabs, this episode had to be bottom 100 material, but it's even worse than that because Sandy basically gets arrested for something that was Plankton's fault and gets publicly humiliated in the process. Number 464, Squidward. We ought to just call this episode Double Standards, the episode. Number 463, A Day Without Tears. This is Funny Pants and Sailor Mouth, except with loads of annoying crying. Number 462, Lost and Found. So Krabs has been holding children hostage so long that they're elderly now. Gee, that makes for a likable character. And also the contrived ending did this episode no favors. Number 461, The Main Drain. I'll call this episode Swiss Cheese because of all the plot holes. Number 460, Grandma's Secret Recipe. Hey, did you like the last Imitation Crabs ripoff? No? Well, too bad, they did it a second time. And a third, but we'll get to that one in due time. Number 459, Hide and Then What Happens. Honestly, this episode is higher than some of the other boring Season 7 episodes because there is a classic level joke towards the end. Patrick Not Star is one of the times I laughed hardest rewatching this show. Number 458, Little Yellow Book. So, the townspeople are jerks. What's new? Oh yeah, and Squidward is a jerk. What's new? Oh yeah, SpongeBob's a moron. What's new? Number 457, Housewarming. It's jellyfish jam, except boring, and the ending is just sad. Not to mention the short at the end is just an admission that they couldn't fill 11 minutes. Number 456, Plankton retires. It's New Leaf, except more boring. Season 10 is the season of ripoffs, I guess. Number 455, Insecurity Guards. I thought we were past the squid torture shtick, but I guess not, since this episode feels like it has to bring back the worst aspects of it. Number 454, Chef Bob. What? I thought we did this one like 10 entries ago. Oh yeah, that was Squidward. My mistake. So, let me ask you this then. What's worse? Doing something stupid, or forgetting you did that and then doing it a decade later? Number 453, Giant Squidward. It's your standard Season 6 squid torture episode, except it doesn't make sense. The growth spray is supposed to work only if you use it on kelp. Number 452, Pets or Pests. So, are these worms food? Are they disgusting? Are they adorable? Yes and no to all three, apparently. Number 451, Are You Happy Now? Here's one I bet you thought would be lower. Yeah, I find SpongeBob's well-intentions to actually be pretty well done here. My only problem is that they mischaracterize Squidward so bad here, it pushes it into the bottom 100. Number 450, Patrick's Tantrum. So aside from the insulting ending and the SpongeBob parts, this episode is a watered-down ripoff of Krusty Crushers, right down to Krabs winning $1 million and it getting destroyed. Number 449, SpongeBob in Random Land. If Pizza Delivery and Squidward and Clarinet Land had a baby, you'd get this episode. Maybe another show should adopt that baby, because it just doesn't fit in SpongeBob. Number 448, Demolition Doofus. Who's the hero? I don't know. Who's the villain? I don't know. Who's the sympathetic character? I don't know. What should you be watching? Anything but this. Number 447, Good Neighbors. Ah yes, the very first squid torture episode. It started the trend, so it's obviously gotta be pretty awful. Number 446, Restraining SpongeBob. Here we have a squid torture episode without a full story. The episode just ends abruptly with no resolution to anything. Number 445, Whirly Brains. So if Salsa Imbecilicus and the Nitwitting weren't enough brain-dead episodes, there was also this one in Season 10. And unfortunately an Ed Asner cameo can't really save this one. Number 444, Who Are Zoo? This is just a Ren and Stimpy episode. From the zookeeper's stupid design to the overall plotline, it just doesn't fit with the show. Also, at the beginning, they reuse a joke from Bubble Stand verbatim. What a soulless episode. Number 443, Biddy Sitting. So they bring back a one-off character only to have SpongeBob and Patrick act like they've never seen this person, let alone know who she is. You can ignore continuity all you want, but you can't act like characters that have interacted are suddenly strangers. Number 442, Bubble Buddy Returns. So, the title is misleading, and the episode we actually get is just a series of Bubble Buddy's son destroying things. Not funny. Number 441, Stanley S. Squarepants. Oh hey, another episode about how a character is destroying things for no reason. You can probably guess how funny I think that is. Number 440, For Here or To Go. This is one of those nameless, faceless, Krusty Krab episodes at the end of Season 8. This episode isn't very enjoyable. Number 439, Summer Job. If you remember the episode Krusty Love, I can imagine you find this episode pretty insulting. But beyond that, having Spongebob still be the annoying one doesn't count as a role reversal. Number 438, Quarantined Crab. Is this episode ban-worthy? No. Is it interesting? No. Do current circumstances make this episode give me a bad taste in my mouth? Yes. It's not really the episode's fault, but I can't not hold it against the episode. Number 437, The Ballad of Filthy Muck. If I told you the two outcomes of this episode are either being disgusted or confused, would you watch this episode? That's what I thought. Number 436, Patrick Staycation. Patrick is kind of a jerk here for no reason, and not much is interesting about the episode besides that. Number 435, Rise and Shine. So, seeing Patrick be stupid for no reason is honestly really unfortunate. This is a bad episode that actually had potential. Number 434, The Monster Who Came to Bikini Bottom. This episode just has no plot. It's just Patrick and this monster goofing around for 11 minutes. Number 433, Plankton's Old Chum. This episode is really disgusting, and the fact that they had to shoehorn in the whole Christmas special motif makes it even worse. Number 432, Squid Baby. I know the whole argument that this episode seems like a fetish porno fanfiction, but I can't really say it's not, but not even reading that deep, this episode is disgusting. Number 431, The Googly Artiste. Double Standards, the sequel. Also, this episode is a middle finger to critics. So, basically this episode is insulting me. Number 430, Spongehenge. This episode has a major tone problem that keeps it from being any sort of quality. Is SpongeBob having fun or is he going insane? I have no idea because this episode can't convey either of them properly. Number 429, Whale of a Birthday. If you don't find the one joke in this episode funny, that is, Krabs not giving a crap about his daughter, then you should just skip it. Number 428, Stuck in the Ringer. A poorly conveyed falling out, followed by a poorly conveyed joke moral that has nothing to do with the episode. Yeah, this is a pretty stupid one. Number 427, Best Day Ever. So they wrote this episode specifically to coincide with a song from the movie. Yeah, not lazy at all. Number 426, Tentacle Vision. I'll tell you why this episode is above all the other Squid torture episodes before it, and it's because of Zeus the Guitar Lord. Yeah, this episode is bad, but Zeus is just the best. Number 425, Krusty Cleaners. So, in this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick go into a building to clean up a mess just to destroy the whole building with no consequences. Remind me, what's supposed to be funny about that? Number 424, Pineapple RV. This episode is a lot like Are You Happy Now, where SpongeBob has good intentions, but that doesn't really excuse the other problems because, yeah, this is a Squid torture episode. Number 423, Pests of the West. Dunces and Dragons is a really good episode, and this is an example of how to do that kind of episode very wrong. Number 422, To Save a Squirrel. This episode is already mean-spirited, but what cements this as bad is the stupid twist ending where it turns out the old man is really Sandy. What a stupid episode. Number 421, Don't Wake Patrick. So, SpongeBob and Patrick are basically breaking and entering, and the only person that seems to get any consequences is SpongeBob. And for some reason he can't or won't wake up Patrick. Dumb. Number 420, Ugh. And here we have the worst episode from the first 3 seasons. Why? Because there's no real dialogue. It's boring. Number 419, The Curse of the Hex. This is just about the most wasted celebrity cameo in the whole show outside of Truth or Square. Number 418, To Love a Patty. It's not funny, endearing, or anything good really to watch SpongeBob fall in love with a sandwich, and the fact that we see how gross it gets toward the end just makes it that much worse. Number 417, SpongeBob's Bad Habit. This episode was just okay until the stupid ending where it turns out SpongeBob really thinks he's Squidward. Number 416, Shuffleboarding. The lazy plot pivot in this episode is something a professional writer should not be doing. Number 415, Goons on the Moon. I'm going to be honest, this episode is more annoying than usual, and I'm not sure why. Plus, there was already an episode where SpongeBob and Sandy go to the moon. Number 414, Gullible Pants. So this episode really lacks substance. It's boring and plotless with no stakes. Number 413, Heart Squid. This episode contains a reused idea that turns creepier than expected. They basically turn into each other, and the first part of the episode is a ripoff of Squidward's School for Grown-Ups. Number 412, House Fancy. I want to say I hate the toenail scene, but honestly that's the only thing interesting about this episode. Number 411, Food Con Castaways. This episode is full of SpongeBob cliches and really brings nothing new to the table. Number 410, Company Picnic. This episode is essentially a first draft. There's no explanation as to why Krabs almost lets Plankton win. He'd have to be stupid to let a good picnic make him sign over the secret formula. Plus, the ending where everything is a hologram is just stupid. Number 409, The Incredible Shrinking Sponge. This is a plotless episode that desperately needs jokes to fill the gap, but doesn't have any. Number 408, Yeti Crabs. The first half of Season 9 is full of really boring episodes, and this one takes the cake in that regard. Because there are no customers, the atmosphere seems quiet and lifeless, which just adds to the boredom. Number 407, One Trick Sponge. It's annoying and even out of character for SpongeBob's usual annoyance. Number 406, Boss for a Day. Imagine if Copy Bob Ditto Pants and Gullible Pants fused together. This is what you'd get. Number 405, Out of the Picture. So Krabs is trying to kill Squidward to make money off his art, and this is played for laughs. What is wrong with this show? Number 404, Sanctuary. So if Sentimental Sponge and Jellyfish Jam fused together, this episode would be the result, and the ending is resolved way too quickly. Number 403, Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful. Here we have a light Squidward torture episode with the element of disgust added to make me hate it even more. Number 402, Professor Squidward. By the end of this episode, I don't know who was annoyed more, Squidward or me. Number 401, The Crabby Chronicle. Krabs has always been unethical, but this episode kicks it up a notch and makes him way more unlikable. Number 400, Squirrel Jelly. Take pre-hibernation week and make Sandy more unlikable. That's this episode. Number 399, Fungus Among Us. There were times watching this that I wanted to vomit. Enough said. Number 398, Snooze You Lose. Here we have a reverse version of slimy dancing, and it adds nothing to the table. Number 397, Lighthouse Louie. I think I'd like the snail in this episode a lot more if there were a plot to this episode, because there's not one. I actually got a comment on my last video saying that this episode was a masterpiece, and I have no idea what that person was talking about. Number 396, A Flea in Her Dome. If you don't find the fleas or the flea bites to be disgusting, you're going to hate SpongeBob and Patrick's antics here still, and so the episode is still going to suck. Number 395, The Clam Whisperer. This episode is just Nature Pants, except nowhere near that level of quality. Number 394, Funny Pants. For an alright plot, it's absolutely ruined by the constant annoying laughter. Number 393, Swamp Mates. You can see the dream ending coming from a mile away, but what's worse is that the events of the episode are referenced in the next one. So was that also a dream? Yeah, this episode just makes no sense. Number 392, New Leaf. This episode's twist ending ruins the mood entirely. You don't always have to go back to the status quo. We know that each episode is self-contained, but that's a lesson they apparently hadn't learned yet. Number 391, Breath of Fresh Squidward. Yay, more double standards! Number 390, Glove World RIP. About the continuity, if you're gonna bring up Glove World closing, there's really no stakes if it pops back up after this episode and Glove Universe is never mentioned again. Number 389, A Squarepants Family Vacation. This episode is annoying at parts, boring at parts, and confusing at parts. The perfect trifecta! Number 388, The Other Patty. Did you ever want to see best frenemies with a stupid twist ending that makes no sense? Well, here you go. Number 387. Number 387, To Squarepants or Not to Squarepants. Half of this episode is hyping something up that's no big deal, and the other half is SpongeBob and Squidward being douches, neither of which is really amusing. But that's it for now. Stay tuned for part 2.